The Texans look to travel to Nashville to commit murder on Music Row and take out the Titans for the clean sweep. We'll talk about all that and more on this edition of The Bullpen.
He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Touchdown! For a Texan touchdown.
Hello and welcome to this edition of The Bullpen. As always, I'm James Roy, and with me is Tom Chavarria. Tom, how are you doing today?
It's good, man. Coming off a great win. I feel really confident about this. Vegas feels really confident about this. Texans open at 7.5-point favorites on the road. Sign me up for that.
I'll take those odds, and I'll also take all this H-Town blue I'm wearing with it. So this is an exciting turn of events. I think a lot of people with CJ Stroud's injury were like, is Davis Mills even going to be able to do anything against the Jaguars? Obviously, he did, and the Texans ended up winning that game. So now we're sitting at 4-5, looking to kind of make the jump, get over. Excuse my mistake here. I'm going to actually switch the background to this week's show. We'll leave that in there. People make mistakes. I'm human. But with the Titans game, it marks both a trap and a welcomed. I don't want to say rest. I don't want to call them a bye week or like say that this is going to be easy. Those are all things that usually result in things not being easy. And this Texans team, I think, knows how to make a football game as easy as it should be hard. So I think that I'll show the respect that's deserved to this matchup and say that I like this matchup for the team. I think going into Tennessee with a divisional game keeps the stakes up there, keeps them kind of on high alert. I like last season, the Texans lost to the Titans in their second matchup, a team that was playing Will Levis and like was not doing very well. So I think that all bets are off. Like, I don't care what the line says. This team should really be taking this seriously because it is must-win football at this point. But so if we're looking at the key matchups, we obviously the Texans have already played the Titans, but I think the big one is Cam Ward. Can he show up? The rookie magic, even though this is a second meeting, I think is something that could stand to adversely affect this team. And then also CJ Stroud versus the injury report, I think is going to be a huge one as well. What are some matchups you're looking forward to this week?
You definitely hit on it. For me, it feels like, can Cam Ward stay upright? He's the most sacked quarterback in football. You got Daniil Hunter coming off a 3.5 sack game. You got Will Anderson Jr. coming off of a sack and a strip to end the game, the last game. I feel like the edges are firing on all cylinders. So it's going to be really tough for Cam to, avoid these guys. I feel like that's the matchup that's going to be talked about a lot. Hopefully JJ Watt's on the call because we're 2-0 with JJ Watt on the call. I doubt we get him again because of that, but if it was asked of him, I think he would say the same thing. So I'm looking forward to that matchup. And then I really feel like CJ is going to be able to play. Obviously, it's too early to tell, but it felt like in Davis Mills' post-game presser, he kind of alluded to the fact, like, I don't think I'll get another start, but, I appreciate the team believing in me to do it. So, he sounded like CJ would be back. So let's hope for that. And I love what this offense is looking like going into this game.
Me too. I like, just speaking of the Texans versus the injury report, I like our chances a lot better with, Jalen Petrie back, especially with MJ Stewart out for the season, bringing back Ed Ingram, just getting back to full health. I like this game because I'd like to see, I think the Titans defensive line is one of their stronger suits. So I think it would be nice to see how this Texans offensive line stacks up against this unit, especially if we want to keep shuffling through people, seeing what we have available. We spoke to it earlier this week. The Texans potentially starting Trent Brown at right tackle if Titus Howard's back. putting him at left guard. So I'd be interested to see if they can get them healthy, so we can see that lineup. But overall, I think the biggest thing in this matchup, as is per usual, is going to be the Texans' offense and their ability to play against this defense, which, if I'm not mistaken, is still one of the worst in the league, and that bodes well. The Texans, when playing teams that are in the bottom two defenses in the league, have done very well against those teams. So I believe last time that the Texans defense shut out the Titans. So I think that this, like I said, I don't want to disrespect this matchup, but there's a lot of factors running in favor of the Texans. Just like I think a lot of Jags fans probably felt like there was factors running in favor of them going into Houston. So I think the biggest narrative for me in this is going for 500. I think that the way this team is viewed can be drastically affected by going from 4-5 to 5-5. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's a big deal, or is it just the Titans? It's whatever. I don't care.
No, I feel like for the psyche of the team, the players getting back to 500, we just this huge weight off their shoulders. I mean, they started the season 0-2, so they haven't been at 500 at all this season. So, that's got to be, something that constantly weighs on a lot of the players. Like, look, how are we supposed to make the playoffs? We can't get 500. So you got to get there before you can get anywhere. And I think, the trap game stuff, I don't see a team that's scrapping and clawing to get, back into a playoff race overlooking anyone. I really think like they're going to be really motivated and come out, hair on fire trying to get this win so that they can basically go, okay, through 10 games, we're 0-0 basically. Now we just got to go be the best version of ourselves for 7 games and see what happens.
Couldn't agree more. I think that it's really hard to discount any matchup. So Raiders, Cardinals, Bills, Chiefs, all pretty much kind of blend together when you need to win pretty much every football game that you have left for the sake of your playoff hopes. But looking at last week and then assimilating it into this week, and trying to build on that, what are some things you saw last week that you would like to see the Texans build on against this Titans team?
I really loved how they moved Davis Mills around in the pocket. There was a lot of play action from under center. I think they had some speed out stuff that they did just to move the line of scrimmage a little bit, to give Davis a little bit more time. And I feel like for CJ, that's something that, this has been something that Nick Caley's been like progressing little by little with his offense, to find ways to keep the quarterback clean. And, Davis Mills, for the most part, wasn't. Now, Jacksonville isn't a team that can really get after the quarterback. They have the least sacks in all of football. But, just doing some of those things against Jacksonville to have some success for the guys on the line, I think bodes well going into this game if they can continue that, because, CJ probably needs to have a clean game right now more than ever, coming off of a concussion. So I love that, they did that against Jacksonville. I hope that they can carry some of that over. I just think Nick Caley called a really good game. And, for all the stuff that people said a month ago, 2 months ago, this was his 9th game. So, you gotta kind of factor that in a little bit. These were always going to be some growing pains that he was going to have. But I think we're starting to see the vision that, teams wanted Nick Caley to be their offensive coordinator for. Is like, this is the kind of output that you could get from a Nick Caley-led team. So I really hope that that's something that we see carry into this football game.
Yeah, I was expecting that to happen. I I think that I made a comparison early on in terms of like Andy Reid. Andy Reid had a very, very rough go of it in his first season as an offensive play caller. I think they won like one of their first 6 games or something like that. when he took the head coaching job in Philly. It could because before that he's no line coach, so that no offensive play calling experience, or at least very limited. So I think that you got to give time. And each time that I've thought that I was at my wit's end with giving Nick Caley time, he's progressed and found a way to bring me back in. So I'm hopeful that by the end of the season, everyone will kind of see, okay, Nick Caley literally just needed to get his feet wet and figure out what he was doing, and also figure out how to mitigate a poor offensive line in terms of skill. So, which, I mean, I thought, like, to speak to your point, I thought he did a really good job of understanding, hey, we're going to this game, we're down our two best offensive linemen, so we're going to have to like move the pocket, call some play action, give Davis Mills a fighting chance to throw this football. So I'll be interested to see that continue. I'd like to see him build on that. But looking at it, I mean, we've already talked a lot about the Titans and Texans throughout the season, and I don't think much has changed between then and now. So let's get into our score predictions. Tom, what do you got?
It's a good question. It's weird. Like, I really feel like this could be lopsided. I think a lot of people feel that way. I think that's why Vegas has the spread where it's at. But you say the things about division games that make me concerned about that. I say all that to say I feel like 24-10 feels right.
I think that's an appropriate call. You never want to go too excessively in favor of your team in a divisional matchup, but I do agree. I think the Texans win. I don't want to call it a blowout. I'd probably go as far as to say like 28-10. Like, I'd throw a couple extra points on there. I think that this Texans team has proven on two separate occasions that if the defense can't stop them, they will just keep scoring. So I think the offensive unit will get a good run in, I would hope, especially if CJ plays. And so I'll go 28-10 with that. Not necessarily a storybook ending. I guess I could talk to when I see this kind of separating. I think that over the first quarter or two, it'll be very much like 14-10 or 20-10, like a look closer, but that, or 21-10, but the Texans will put in that extra touchdown and put it out of reach later on in the game. And just kind of, it'll be a dominant win. I would anticipate based off that. Like, it's not just going to be like, oh, the scoreboard doesn't show it. Like, it's going to be, no, the scoreboard shows exactly how dominant of a win that was. So yeah, I mean, I think it should be a good game for Texans fans and the Texans. So, all right. Well, thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Bullpen. As always, I've been James Roy. You can find me at James Roy NFL wherever you get your social media, and that's Tom, TC Tom1 on Instagram, and Third Coast Tom on Twitter. And we are the Bullpen, the #1 veteran-run podcast in the entire universe, until further notice, until someone proves that wrong. I thought it was important to mention that, especially with it being the week of Veterans Day. So thanks for tuning in. As always, stay classy, Houston. And vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.
Take the handoff. Stroud looking. Stroud.